I don't think he left the area. I'm not convinced that he walked all the way back here where there's a sort of photograph of him. I think he is somewhere out there in the hills. The weather here is pretty hot. There's no services here, but I do think he left the road.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Do you believe that? Two key witnesses who were with Jay in these final hours have been identified. According to The Sun, TV detective Mark Williams Thomas spoke at a press conference in Tenerife today, that's on day 10, where he claimed that both of the men Jay hung out with in his final hours are black and in their 30s or early 40s. That already is quite strange. You know, these men are almost twice his age. What is going on? They are said to be from Luton, Bedfordshire, that's according to the article, with one going by the nickname Johnny Vegas. Neither of them are believed to have been in the NRG Music Festival where Jay spent the day partying before he vanished. So why did he meet them? How did he meet them? What kind of did they have in common? One of the men was described as around 6 foot tall, quite stocky, with short dark hair. Now, I credit Mark Williams Thomas for taking the right approach in the Madeleine McCann case by dismissing the suspicion around Christian Bruckner. You know, this whole idea that he's the prime suspect. That is not what Williams Thomas, as far as I know, believes. And so I think he's got a bit of a feather in his cap in that regard. But then the question is, will he take the right approach in the search for Jay Slater? You may well ask, what is the right approach? Before we get to that, let's have a look at what Williams Thomas calls the line of inquiry that he says he's following. And so there are basically two that he's following. And so the question is this the right approach? So according to the article, a TV detective says third-party involvement and the drug underworld of Tenerife is a line of inquiry in the hunt for missing teenager Jay Slater, right? Mark Williams Thomas, a former police officer, held a press conference in Tenerife today, that's June 26th. He said he's spoken with Jay's family, and he says if Jay is not found, then third-party involvement in his disappearance could be considered. Well, I don't know if one would say should be considered, but I think it could be considered anyway. He said, I don't believe he is in close proximity to the rental. It's a very easy area to search. Now, I don't know really what he means by close proximity. I would say close proximity is anywhere between 10 and 20 miles, but basically kind of in that area. And I think he is in close proximity. In other words, in the north, certainly, of Tenerife, that sort of region. And I don't think it's the very easy area to search that should be the focus, to be quite honest. Anyway, now clearly where people disappear and are never found, as we saw in the Jennifer Dulos case in Connecticut, she's still not been found. Kelsey Bereth in Colorado, foul play is almost inevitable. But we are not even 2 weeks into the search over not simple, not straightforward, and not easy terrain. So I think now is clearly premature to be jumping to the first conclusion here, which is that Jay is not found. I mean, I don't think we're at that point. If Jay isn't found a month from now, basically, you know, this time next month, then I think the pendulum does begin to shift. But we also need to note one of the worst areas to kidnap or hide a body would be an inaccessible area, an area that's difficult to get into or get out of, with massive line of sight. You know, there's so many viewpoints. that penetrate deep into these valleys. If someone was trying to move someone against them, well, you'd see them and perhaps hear them from miles away. Not only that, there's hard, brittle, difficult to penetrate terrain. The TV detective also said, "I've received information there's no doubt an underworld here, a big drugs culture. I can't tell you at the moment whether that has had a big impact. I've only been here less than 48 hours. Well, I think I can answer that question. The crime stats for Tenerife are amongst the lowest in Europe. So if you're talking about a big drugs culture, I don't know, what are you comparing it to? The Vatican or Antarctica, or I don't know. Then he says, what I can tell you is the information I currently have. The family has shared everything with me. I have a lot of messages and WhatsApp chats. This is a line of inquiry. Now, from that, it sounds like he's saying, I have a lot of Jay's messages and WhatsApp chats, and that makes it the inference one draws from that is that has taken the detective in that particular direction. Well, it hasn't seemed to taken the parents in that direction, although they seem to be saying that they think he's been taken. And maybe that is based on some of the messages they've gotten from him. But here's the problem with that theory, which, by the way, was a floating theory that fizzled in the Brian Koberger case as well, also in the Kylie Rodney case. It also came up in the O.J. Simpson trial. It's also in the Riley Strain case. The problem is that Jay isn't a high-value target, or to be more blunt about it, he's not Mr. Moneybags. He's getting around on the island in a bus and on foot, and he had to save up to get there. Now, that's not to say a drug scenario is impossible. It's not. The question is one of the probabilities. The line of inquiry is it's a possibility. The question is it probable? I would say not very. What is more probable? That drug lords and drug barons swooped in perhaps from Vegas or Colombia, or that a tired reveler found himself in tricky terrain without water or a signal or a way out. Now, it is possible that he indulged in or enjoyed some sort of substances with these individuals. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are drug traffickers or drug barons, simply that they were people who shared in that, which is something that happens a lot with travelers and people at dance festivals and all that kind of thing. Now, another line of inquiry are these two witnesses. Now, in this area, I have to say I have mixed feelings, and I'll get to those in a moment. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I don't know if any of those who unsubscribed because of the clickbait, I mean, it clearly was clickbait on the last video, but dare I say that on the title slide is a picture of the British hiker. A British hiker is on the picture of the title slide that police were asked to locate, right? Somebody asked the police to get involved. That picture was in color in the center of the slide, right alongside the word found, while Jay's image is kind of washed out and it's in the background. So I've got to say, for those who took such umbrage to that, and for an audience that's supposed to pay attention to detail and notice things, did you not notice that? Did you not notice the man's face in the middle of that title slide, which is based on a news story, British hiker found? That's pretty disappointing. I've heard how disappointed some of you are in me. Obviously, some of you don't know me very well, but boy, am I disappointed in you for having to think and observe for a second. So I am sorry that people were crying blue murder because they felt tricked into pressing a finger on a mouse. I don't know if you guys know, I've just spent 7 weeks traveling through America at tremendous effort, hiring cars, taking flights, staying in hotels, traveling from one area that I've covered on YouTube to another area, sometimes where I've written books about, at enormous cost. And at one point I actually got sick and I just continued traveling. And I continued putting videos up on YouTube often on Boeing and other topics that didn't really get any real attention from you guys, but I nevertheless put in the effort. And you guys felt tricked into pressing a finger on a mouse and felt that that was some terrible crime that was committed because you weren't paying attention to the slide. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to cry crocodile tears if you're no longer going to be part of the channel. In fact, it's probably better if you aren't. For those who saw what was going on, high five to you guys. And I think those who watched the 19-minute video, I think you'll see that the line of inquiry that I went down, that it is actually quite fascinating. I've learned a lot of things. I've only shared some of it with you guys. I'll be happy to share a little bit more of it a little bit later. Now, in terms of the two key witnesses, as I said, I've got mixed feelings. On the one hand, it would be remiss not to point out that everyone seems to be looking for Jay except these two individuals. And a lot of people are expressing concern about Jay, but not these individuals. Of course, they were hardly close friends. Perhaps they were more accurately casual acquaintances. Now, according to the Daily Mail, TV investigator Mark Williams-Thomas has urged these two mystery British men who were with missing raver Jay Slater to come forward. And he's actually threatened them. He said, or he will release a picture of one of them. Now, as I say, I've kind of got mixed feelings about this. This, for me at least, is a more difficult and delicate situation because we know the Spanish cops interviewed both men and presumably gave them the all clear. Now, clearly we don't know what the cops know or what these men said, and I don't blame anyone for wanting to know. I mean, I want to know. But one can also see where this will inevitably lead. Whether or not these men can help the investigation is not going to be the issue for the ravenous social media. Obviously, the question is, from the police's perspective, can these men help, right? And I think for many, in terms of social media, they are just going to become the next target, just like Jay's mother, Tom Hilton, and Lucy has been. And so if I were them, and if they're listening to me, my advice would be, do not come forward. Or come forward to the British authorities, but for pity's sake, stay away from the media and stay the heck away from YouTubers and TikTokers. Now, I don't know if I was this opportunistic, money-grubbing, whatever, would I be saying something like that? Because that's the kind of content that not only am I interested in, but I know you are interested in. So why on earth would I make some kind of gesture like that? Or maybe because I'm a little bit altruistic. Anyway, it's also interesting to me that despite Mark Williams-Thomas, as I understand it, asking Debbie Duncan and Warren Slater, Jay's parents, to appear with him at a media event, that's how I understand it, they didn't. They chose not to. And I think that is because the Spanish police didn't sanction it, and that in itself is quite interesting. And they didn't sanction it because what happens is it becomes a parallel investigation. Basically, the media carnival is now going to devolve from that into a traveling circus. Williams-Thomas isn't a rookie, but let's face it, he's also not a detective. He's a TV detective, and there's a difference. And so I give kudos to Jay's family for, in my view, making the right call in that respect. They need to support the hardworking local police. They've been here all along. They have been at it for almost 2 weeks straight. And what the local police actually need to do is concentrate on basically covering an area in order to exclude it. You know, in the way that you polygraph someone in order to exclude them. It's the same thing with the terrain. You need to not polygraph it, but you certainly need to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and say, okay, we've gone through that area, that's done. That area, that's done. Systematically, and that's what the police have kind of been doing. Now, obviously, the TV detective, if he got rid of his TV and kind of got straight to work, searching the terrain, well, that's what I would do. The first thing I would do would be to search the terrain. that would be my primary focus. Has that been his primary focus? Because only, having a thorough search, only after you've had a thorough search, can you say with any degree of confidence and competency that Jay is definitively, obviously, and absolutely not in the area. I think it's going to take a while to get to that point. Quite a lot of searching still needs to happen. I don't think we're near that point yet. Perhaps we might be in another week or two. And I do think that we are going to have a result. I actually thought it would be Sunday, but I think we are very close, maybe in the next day or two, to something. Now, Mark Williams Thomas has said that he will find Jay in 3 days. I do think Jay is very likely to be found in 3 days, but I'm not sure if it'll be because of Mark Williams Thomas, but I stand corrected. Anyway, another issue that favors the search, and I'm sorry if this is upsetting to think about or even to mention, is that and by the way, if you got your cursor or your finger on the unsubscribe button, now is the moment to be really vigilant, because I'm about to say something that may upset you, right? Don't worry about whether it's true or whether it's accurate or whether it's based on something that I'm basing on experience. Base it on how triggering it is to you and how offensive it is to you. Are you ready? I'm about to go right there, right? The more time that goes by, the more likely Jay may be found not due to being seen, but as I'm sorry to say, being smelled by people or especially trained dogs that are in the area. And why do I say this? How do I know this? Well, that is how Nora Corrin was found. And I covered that case. I wrote a book about it. And how was Nora Corrin found? By hikers. And how were they alerted? Well, by the smell. They smelled something before they saw anything. And when they followed that smell, they found her. So if Jay is in the area, that is likely, as disquieting and unpleasant as that is likely to actually aid the search. Now, to be clear, Nora was found in the Malaysian jungle at about this same point in the timeline on day 10. Today was day 10 in the search for Jay Slater. Now, I think one could ask, is the Malaysian jungle a harder deal, or is this terrain more difficult? And that is really why I want to continue dealing with the topography, because we don't really know it very well. I certainly learned a lot about it. And I think that is what we need to do, get to know the terrain as a kind of character, right? If you want to try and get to know these two individuals, they're characters, yes. But also the terrain is another character. How dangerous is the terrain? How pernicious is the terrain? And so, the search for Nora was definitely through dense jungle and tricky terrain. And there were also environmental issues to deal with, extreme heat, extreme humidity, but there was also actually plenty of water. She was ultimately found at the nearest water source and just 1.6 miles from the resort, which suggested the searches on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, if they had just been methodical and careful in radiating away from the hotel, they only had to search basically a 1 mile radius. And if they'd done that, they would have found her. Now, according to the BBC reporting on that case in January 2021, Nora's body was found 10 days later, about 1.6 miles, that's just 2.5 kilometers away. And then earlier this month, a coroner ruled that she died as a result of misadventure. And that is my working theory for this case. I know it's not very sexy. I know it's not going to get the kind of views that drug lords and all these other things are doing. But of course, I'm trying to clickbait everybody. I'm trying to clickbait you with the thing that he fell while walking in the wilderness. No foul play, just that. Anyway, make no mistake, during the vacuum period when Nora was missing, you had the same thing. Minimal news, but wild theories circulating as well. There was a big Madeleine McCann. This is a Madeleine McCann thing. and then when her body was found, there was no evidence of any other person, no evidence of any, let's call it, inappropriate contact. And yet, as I say, had the searchers just stuck to the most obvious brief, search from where she went missing, concentrate in that area, Nora wandered off and got lost. Well, the search would have concentrated around the hotel, and she may have been found after 1 day or 2 days. But everyone got caught up in fanciful ideas, and they started sending people to faraway villages to search for kidnappers and abductors. And in this case, you've had the same thing. Oh, I think we've got a sighting here. Okay, send the police over there. Oh, false alarm. Oh, I think we've got a sighting over there. Send the police over there. False alarm. Concentrate on what you know. In the Nora Corrin case, in the end, it wasn't helicopters, it wasn't drones, it wasn't soldiers, it wasn't ground-penetrating radar, it wasn't dogs, it wasn't TV journalists, it wasn't Sherlock Holmes who found Nora. It was local hikers. It was the ordinary terrain that defeated cursory inquiry. Now, in the same way, the search for Jay, I feel, ought to concentrate on at least a 5-mile radius from where his phone last pinged, right? And what's wrong with doing that? Just make absolutely sure in this circle, in this radius, that you've excluded the possibility that he might be somewhere there, in the folds, in the little ravines, in the sort of idiosyncrasies of this treacherous terrain. Now, the value, of course, in the two key witnesses is that they could provide much deeper insight into Jay's condition and Jay's state of mind. For example, did he eat breakfast? If he ate breakfast, that is going to give you an indication of how far he could have gone on a certain amount of energy that would have been in his body. Did he sleep at all? That's also going to give you an indication. Was he using any substances? Did he have any money with him? Why didn't he charge his cell phone? Presumably the Spanish police asked these questions, though, and they got their answers. And that is informing, to some extent, their search, and also perhaps to some extent excluding certain possibilities. Now, having dealt with the wild goose chase again of drug smugglers and a not very suspicious British duo who have gotten out of Dodge, I wonder how many of you got clickbaited into the ludicrous notion that Jay is somewhere out there and has been watching football all along. I mean, did you go and think about that, or did someone need to warn you that that line of inquiry was patently absurd? And so have you enriched some YouTuber who went down that kind of rabbit hole? But that waste of time didn't bother you. I'm not going to belabor the point, but I must say I don't enjoy being, lambasted the way I have been on my channel. I really don't like it. I've got better things to do with my time and my energy, and so I am considering shifting a lot more of my content to the members-only section. So you can continue doing it, and the result will be you'll have to pay for the content that you're actually getting for free. I put in the same amount of effort, and it's really a matter of if you want to put in the effort with all the scorn and all that kind of thing, you can, but then I'm just going to put it into members only, and I'm willing to take the hit because it will be taking a hit. I'm willing to take it. I'm really not willing to deal with all of this hateful vitriol. It just simply isn't worth it to me. And if you don't know who I am, I don't really care if you don't know who I am. I know who I am. But if you don't know, I'm not going to, I don't need to try very hard to make you know who I am. It's really not a big issue for me. In any event, I hope you found this analysis worthwhile. I am really looking forward to sharing the insights in terms of the topography. And what's also quite exciting is I've stumbled on the number 3 clue that we've all missed, which I think is actually quite worthwhile to consider. Anyway, the ball is in your court. If you want to continue being nasty, then just go ahead. And then we can, as I say, move things to members only. And I really don't mind doing it. Doesn't change my life very much. It will certainly change yours a lot more than mine. In any event, I hope you've found this analysis worthwhile. Basically, the bottom line is what John Williams Thomas has said about the drug narrative. I don't put too much stock into it. What about you? But I guess time will tell. I mean, the case is still quite young. We will see in the end what happens. And certainly drugs are part of what happens at raves. And he apparently has access to more information than I do. So I guess we'll just see, won't we? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.